Newsday continues here on One News Now. I'm Charles Lejano. The Health Department insists that the government does not prefer any type of vaccine over others. That's after critics called out the government for supposedly favoring China-made shots. On 1PH sa Totoo Lang, DOH Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere disputed this, saying the government is not playing favorites and is merely securing supplies from vaccine manufacturers that can readily commit. Vergere stressed that first world countries already have their hands on 80% of the world's vaccine supply, which is why the Philippines needs to strategically position itself in the market.
We have to remember there is a scarcity of these vaccines. Ibig sabihin, yung competition across the globe ay napakalaki na po. So kailangan po nating pumosisyon. We have a portfolio of vaccines. Wala po tayong preference for any type of vaccine. Kung ano po yung mauunang makapag-commit and kung ano po yung mauunang makapag-negotiate tayo.
Provincial governments are asking to be given a bigger role in procuring vaccines for their constituents. League of Provinces in the Philippines President Presbitero Velasco says provincial governments should be given the autonomy to lead their own supplemental vaccine procurement efforts. After all, Velasco said some provinces have already set aside the budget to augment whatever vaccines that the national government can procure for the country. He added that the national government should extend more support to provinces and regions whose coffers are not deep enough to buy the shots.
Yan nga po ang tatalakayan namin. Gusto namin maganda naman yung allocation at fair. At syempre po, dahil nga po hindi naman po makapag-allocate na malaking pondo yung 3rd, 4th, and 5th class provinces, ay umaasa po naman tayo na talaga pong yun ang pupunan na mas malaking alokasyon ng national government. Gusto po namin makita na kahit po wala namang available na malaking pondo yung mga lower ranked provinces, ay mabigyan naman ng magandang alokasyon.
Meanwhile, Iloilo Mayor Jerry Treñas says some LGUs have ongoing talks directly with vaccine manufacturers as authorized by the national government through multi-partite deals. He says Iloilo is already in talks with AstraZeneca, Moderna, and Pfizer, and have set discussions with Novavax and Gamaleya. But Treñas says some other LGUs have yet to secure authorization to start talks with vaccine makers.
Other cities would like to go directly to the pharmaceutical companies already. Due to the nature of the emergency use agreement, we cannot go directly to the pharmaceutical companies. Cities like Bacolod, Iloilo, naka-direkta na kami sa AstraZeneca. But we are doing the survey so that the other cities would like also to talk to the other pharmaceutical companies.
FDA Director General Eric Domingo says he won't be picky when it comes to the type of COVID-19 vaccine that he will receive. In an interview with 1PH's Wagpo, Domingo said he is willing to get inoculated using the first set of vaccines that will be available in the Philippines regardless of the brand. He reiterated, though, that all COVID-19 shots will have to get the FDA's approval before entering the Philippine market. That's even if these shots have already been approved by countries with more advanced technology.
Kailangan i-check ko rin naman, hindi naman pwedeng stamp pad lang naman tayo. Dahil karamihan kasi sa mga ito, hindi naman na clinical trial dito sa Pilipinas. Kaya kung anong mauna, yun ang preference ko. Kahit sinong mauna sa kanila, pwede na akong pumila. Dahil taga-PDH ako, matuturokan ako sigurado.
The Immigration Bureau says the Palace and the IATF are discussing the possible extension or expansion of travel restrictions. Recall that the government imposed a travel ban until January 15 on countries affected by the new COVID-19 strain. Immigration spokesperson Dana Sandoval said they will continue to implement this ban until Friday, while talks on its possible extension are still ongoing. Sandoval also clarified that OFWs heading to countries included in the travel ban are allowed to do so, as long as they have the necessary documents.
we trust the wisdom of the Malacanang po and of course the IATF when it comes to deciding on the implementation po of our travel restrictions. Siyempre po marami po sila na mga bagay na tinitimbang when implementing travel restrictions. Andyan po yung health aspect, andyan po yung spread ng COVID-19 doon po sa mga bansang iyon.
You're looking at live pictures of the lower house's opening salvo for 2021. Lawmakers will now start to discuss renewed proposals to amend the 1987 Constitution. The session is led by House Speaker Lord Alan Velasco, who himself authored one of the several measures filed in the House seeking to amend the 34-year-old Constitution. Stay tuned here on One News for the latest developments on this story. We'll be back with more updates as the session unfolds, but for now, here's everything we know so far about the charter change being pursued by the President's allies in Congress. House Speaker Lord Alan Velasco and allied senators claim that the amendments will be swift since it will be limited to the economic provisions of the Constitution. Specifically, they want to relax constitutional restrictions that limit foreign participation in governing local entities by adding the phrase "unless otherwise provided by law." They want to add the same phrase to provisions that say only Filipino citizens can control, own, or lease public utilities, educational institutions, and mass media companies in the Philippines. Adding the statement will empower Congress to pass laws that will ease foreign investment restrictions in the country. Meanwhile, the Committee on Constitutional Amendments Chairman Alfredo Garbin insists that they will not touch political provisions, like clauses on the party list system and the term limits of elected officials. Recall that the President himself has been calling for amendments to the country's party list system in a bid to boot out what he calls communist front organizations in Congress. But Garbin said they will not take up this matter through Chacha, since the Party List System Act already provides grounds for the disqualification of party lists. Garbin, who is a party list representative himself, added that the party list system should be reformed and not abolished. Leaders of political parties and blocs have agreed to back Velasco's push to amend parts of the Constitution. Deputy Speaker Bernadette Herrera D says they reached a consensus during a caucus called for and presided by Velasco yesterday. Major political parties and blocs in the House, including PDP Laban, the Nationalist People's Coalition, the Nationalist Party, Hugpong ng Pagbabago, and others were present at this meeting. One lawmaker who isn't on board with this new push for Chacha is former House Speaker Pantaleon Alvarez. He says it's hard to trust that the Chacha will really be limited to economic provisions, since the process of amending the Constitution will open up all of its parts to all sorts of changes. But back in 2018, Alvarez was the biggest supporter of Chacha while he was still the Speaker of the House. In fact, Alvarez said the charter change will, quote, definitely happen during Duterte's term. Alvarez now says that the ongoing pandemic and tight timetable are his main reasons for opposing efforts to change the fundamental law of the land.
At this time, wrong timing na yan. No, isipin natin, October, month of October, yun yung last day for filing ng certificates of candidacy. So ilang buwan na lang yun from now. Hindi naman pwedeng basta madaliin mo yan because remember, we are not passing an ordinary bill. We are amending the Constitution.
The health crisis has made travel more difficult for commuters, but for officers in the Interagency Council for Traffic, this is not an excuse for colorum vehicles to continue operating. Let's find out the latest on the IACT's anti-colorum campaign with Justine Consalang. She's reporting live from San Fernando, Pampanga. Justine, good morning. Could you give us the latest?
Charles, it seems that the Interagency Council for Traffic has made it their New Year's resolution to rid the roads of colorum vehicles. And this time, they went all the way to Pampanga. A team of IACT operatives, LTFRB enforcers, and Highway Patrol Group policemen separated into 5 smaller groups for their anti-colorum operation this morning. One of the team was stationed at the San Fernando exit, and they were able to immediately apprehend 4 vans, all of which were not able to present either a contract of lease or insurance policy for their passengers. One of the van drivers claimed that he was driving a shuttle service for a private company. But after the passengers were asked to alight the vehicle, they admitted that they were all from the same company, but they still pay 110 pesos per ride per day. Another van driver claimed that his passengers were his relatives and neighbors, but after some questioning, he himself admitted that his passengers paid 400 pesos for gasoline fee. According to IACT team leader retired Colonel Jose Manuel Bonivi, they decided to operate in Pampanga after receiving a complaint about the rampant colorum operations in the area. These colorum vehicles are not just limited to vans, but also taxi units that ask payments per head and not based from the meter reading. They also apprehended private cars that operate like taxi and fire their passengers on a fixed price per head. Charles, the IACT has already wrapped up their operation. In total, they apprehended 14 vehicles, and all of which will be brought to Magalang, Pampanga at the LTFRB's impounding facility. The the owners will be fined 120,000 pesos for the sedans and 200,000 pesos for the vans. Sadly, Charles, there was one van that evaded the arrest or the apprehension by speeding away from the authorities. Charles?
Thank you, Justine Ponsalang, reporting live from Pampanga. And those are the top stories of the hour. Join us later at 1 p.m. as we continue to monitor the day's biggest stories. You can also catch One News on the Signal Play app. Register for a free account at www.signalplay.com and stream One News live anytime and anywhere. I'm Charles Lejano. We are One News.